Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Chief Petty Officer Ian Archer. This evening, we warmly welcome members of the Australian Defence Force Junior Enlistment Team. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Casino Christian School, North Casino, New South Wales, and Aspect Central Coast School, Wamberal, New South Wales. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is God by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest, wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Gerald Edward Aplin. Gerald Aplin was born on the 22nd of July 1883 in Townsville, Queensland. He was the youngest of 8 children born to William Aplin, the local mayor and parliamentarian, and his wife Mary. When Gerald was just 3 years old, his mother passed away, leaving his widowed father to raise their large family. Gerald's father remarried soon after, and his children were raised in wealthy circumstances in the suburb of Melton Hill. Gerald was educated at Townsville Grammar School and on completion began working as a grazier. He purchased the large Woolloongorang station on the border of Queensland and the Northern Territory in 1908, which he co-owned with Thomas Brassey McIntosh. In 1915, almost a year into the First World War, Gerald travelled to New Farm, Brisbane, where he married Margaret Constance Knight-Eaton on the 7th of July. Just 20 days later, Gerald Aplin enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force and was allotted to the 4th Reinforcements of the 25th Battalion with the rank of private. After a short period of training in Australia, he embarked for active service from Brisbane on the 18th of September 1915 aboard the troop ship Armidale. Private Aplin reached Egypt too late to fight on Gallipoli. In Alexandria, he joined the rest of his battalion on the 4th of February 1916. Within a few weeks, they moved to the French city of Marseille and were immediately sent north to the French and Belgian border. There, Aplin's unit undertook periods of training behind the lines, as well as short stints on duty in the trenches. In July, the 25th was sent to the Somme Valley to take part in the advance on German positions around the village of Pozières. They entered the front lines around the village on the 28th of July 1916. They began their advance just after midnight. In 5 waves, the men jumped the parapets, immediately coming under murderous machine gun fire from enemy lines. As they pressed forward, Aplin and his comrades were hit by the enemy's artillery, as well as fire from mortars just as they reached their first objective. By the time they made it to the second trench, the 25th was so outnumbered they were forced to dig in for cover. Private Herbert Harris described the battle. Imagine men dug in a few feet into the ground and shells falling just like rain, trenches blown up and men digging for dear life to rebuild them, or rescuing their comrades who were buried, and in most cases the rescuers were also buried by shells. We were bombarded with tear and gas shells, which made us wear our gas helmets. It was almost impossible to see and hard to breathe. I have heard officers and men say that the landing and the Lone Pine battle at Gallipoli were a picnic compared to this last fight. Shortly after, they received orders to retreat to their own lines. By the following morning, the 25th Battalion had suffered some 340 casualties. Among the missing was Private Gerald Aplin. He remained missing for well over a year, during which time nothing was heard of him. At the end of July 1917, a court of inquiry determined that Aplin was most likely killed in action during his unit's attack at Pozières. His mate, Sergeant Morton, recounted the last time he saw Aplin. Fennelly found Aplin wounded in a shell hole and was giving him a cup of water when another bullet struck Aplin and he was killed instantly. He practically died in Fennelly's arms. As they were leaving, he was just breathing his last. Aplin's final resting place was never uncovered. Today, he is commemorated at the Australian Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux with more than 10,000 others who have no known grave. Private Gerald Aplin was 33 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Gerald Edward Aplin, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.